Okay, we're now in the fourth book of the Torah, the book of Numbers, and as you can see, I've changed the theme of this book, the color, to red, primarily just to contrast the other books, but you might say that, unfortunately, there are a lot of fighting and even wars that go on in this book, so red might be somewhat of an appropriate color for the book of Numbers. Well, we saw already in terms of the tabernacle in the book of Exodus how it was built. In Leviticus, it dealt with how to use it and what you're supposed to bring to it. Now, the first three parshas in the book of Numbers, as we once mentioned before, deals with the encampment, how the Jewish people actually lived around the tabernacle. In Parsha 1, it deals with a census being taken of the entire nation, tribe by tribe, and that's why it's actually called the book of Numbers, because the census is taken here, and it'll be taken later on in the book as well. And I just want to point out the census is taken very carefully. Actually, every name of every Jew was counted, so that it wasn't just a mere quantity, but people were identified first by who they were, and then their identities were counted. So it's very important that people don't get reduced to a sense of just being one of a grand total, but every identity makes a difference. And that's something which is stressed right here in that first parsha. Altogether, the count is of men over the age of 20. There were 603,550 men counted, which we approximate to mean that in total there were about 3 million Jews living in the desert at that time, traveling from Egypt towards the borders of the land of Israel. And then the camp is set up. As I've mentioned before, we have the tabernacle in the middle. We have the 12 tribes who are situated around the tabernacle, 3 on either side. And then you have the Levite tribe surrounding 3 sides of the tabernacle. And then Moses, Aaron, and Miriam camped over here. So the tabernacle is in the center. Now, first of all, you'll note in terms of how many tribes there are, it seems a bit confusing. Are there 12 tribes, or it seems to be a 13th tribe? And most people are familiar with the concept of the 12 tribes. So just to clarify what this means, first of all, back in the book of Genesis, in the very last parsha, Jacob gives Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, blessings that they should be counted amongst the tribes. So at times, Joseph won't be counted as a tribe. His 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be counted as tribes. So it works like this. The Levites, at times, are not going to be counted amongst the rest of the nation. When they're not counted amongst the rest of the nation, Joseph is not counted. His 2 sons are counted, and that'll make up the 12. When the Levites are counted amongst the 12, then the tribe of Joseph will be counted, and his sons will not be counted as individual tribes. Now, why were the Levites singled out? Well, as you recall, back in the book of Exodus, parsha number 9, that's where we have the sin of the golden calf. And when Moses came down from the mountain, and he saw everything going on with the people partying around, he asked, "Who is for God? Come from me." And they must slay those who participated. Only the Levite tribe actually answered Moses' call, and they took part in avenging God's honor by getting rid of those who participated in the golden calf. At that point, there was a major change announced for the Jewish people. Originally, the firstborn of every tribe would have served as the priest. They would have been the Cohen. Every family would have a Cohen. That would be the firstborn son that would serve within the tabernacle and eventually the temple of Jerusalem. But when the Levite tribe answered the call and the firstborn did not stand up for God's honor, then God announced that they were going to lose their position of prominence, and now the tribe of the Levites are going to take over as the ones who are going to have a strong connection to the tabernacle. And eventually it's amongst the Levites, Aaron and his sons, who are going to become the actual priests within the tabernacle. So in parsha number 2, we learn more about the Levite families. We actually learn about them at the end of the first parsha, but we have 3 families, and when the tabernacle is transported, they're going to carry different parts of the tabernacle. One family will carry the actual holy vessels, one will carry the tent coverings, and the third will carry the beams. And then we have the dedication of the altar. The altar where the sacrifices are brought was dedicated by the leaders of the tribes. There are 12 tribes, and beginning on one day and then for the next 11 days, they brought gifts to honor the altar. And this is part of the inauguration of the tabernacle. And then in parsha number 3, we have the first journey from Mount Sinai. How long have we been there? Well, it's altogether 13 months approximately after leaving Egypt that we're now finally traversing the desert to go towards the land of Israel. The tabernacle is taken apart. It's going to be put on wagons, and the nation's going to travel in a formation going from their encampment to the encampment, following clouds of glory that will guide them through the desert. So it's just 13 months after leaving Egypt that we're finally now leaving and going towards the land of Canaan. It's 11 months they've been camped at the foot of Mount Sinai, and now they're ready to journey towards the land. Okay, it's review time, so let's get rid of everything, and here we go. Numbers has 10 parshas. The first 3 parshas deal with the encampment. The first parsha, the census is taken and the camp is set up. Altogether, was 603,550 men. In total, approximately 3 million Jews. And the camp was set up with the 12 tribes around the tabernacle, with the tribe of the Levites surrounding the tabernacle. Then parsha 2, the Levite families are further specified with their roles in carrying the tabernacle. And then there's the dedication of the altar. Parsha 3, with the first journey from Mount Sinai, it was approximately just over 13 months from leaving the land of Egypt.